In this video, we're going to be talking about using splines to model the head. So splines in and of itself is really just a collection of line shapes. So the line is also called a spline. Now, spline modeling has got some particular advantages and some potential disadvantages for how things work. So we're going to start just by doing some basic tracing and figuring out where we want our shape. So we'll bring that all the way down. A good idea or a good practice with spline modeling is to try to keep things as minimal as possible. So as I move this around, let's just grab all of this and right click and convert to Bezier. So Bezier is going to give me a bit more control over the curvature of that shape. Alright, so we'll get out of the sub-object, we'll make another shape. So we're going to make now one from the side. Go back to create, line, and then we'll trace it over here. When I get to the opening in the face area here, we're just going to create a couple edges and we'll end up deleting right in there. So I'm going to go to my modify, expand my sub-object, look at segment, and we're going to remove that segment. I'm going to leave that area open for now. Alright, so we'll get out of the sub-object, we'll go back to create, and we'll make basically that opening. Let's bring that forward here. So we'll bring that up to approximately where we want it on the helmet. We'll also bring forward the one that we traced, that is the profile of the helmet there. Go back here, we'll go into vertex, and then we'll start adjusting this a bit. So a lot of times what I can do is I can select all those, we'll go to smooth, we'll get a pretty smooth curve out of it, and then we'll go back to Bezier. Or, while I'm still in smooth, I can do some adjustment here, and it'll pretty much auto create the tangents on those shapes to keep things as smooth as possible. So that's pretty good. Let's grab all that and start thinking about how that's going to have to follow the curvature of the helmet back. So we're start bringing those back, selecting a smaller and smaller area until we get to just the corner here, and we'll bring that one back. So that's an okay start. So we'll look at bringing these back a bit more, and then all of those back a bit more. Now as I look at this from this angle here, and then look at where we are on the side, my top edge here has got to come down a bit in order to match up with where the opening in the helmet is. So we can look at then fine-tuning things here a bit more, bringing the bottom edge forward a bit to get everything to match up with the other splines. Now, I don't have to worry too much about getting things to match up perfectly because we'll be kind of fixing that here in just a minute. Alright, that's pretty good. Now we need an idea of what things are going to look like from the top. So I'm just going to grab and make an arc. So when I make an arc, I'm just going to drag the length of it there, and then we're going to pull out on the side. So I get a nice smooth curve to define the roundness of the helmet that way. So then we'll grab and move that up. And then I can go to modify. Now this is an arc, so it's a parametric object. So what I need to do is I need to right click and convert it to an editable spline. That way I'll get the vertices on my object that I have more direct control over. So for now this all looks really good, but I'm going to have to refine that shape a bit so that I have vertices on the object where I need them. So for now, let's see, that's probably going to be alright. I'm going to need a couple more later, but for now we'll just leave it. Alright, so again, I also know I'm going to need another copy of this shape. Because of the way spline modeling works, the surface modifier is going to be applied to this collection of line shapes. In order for the surface modifier to actually create the geometry, it needs all closed four-sided polygons or four-sided edges. So right now, nothing here, except maybe this big chunk in the back, could be capped. And if we look at the vertex, there's more than 4 segments along that edge, so it wouldn't even be able to cap that. So what we need to do is actually go find attach. When I hit attach or attach multiple, I can bring all of my shapes together into one collection. And then when I go to vertex, I can see all of the vertices on these objects. So it's all one set of shapes now, even though, like here, there are two vertices. So the fact that there's two vertices there means that I can't actually join them together, but I don't need to. What I'm going to use is fuse to bring them together to the exact same point in three-dimensional space. So as I fuse them together, it's going to allow the surface modifier to create those caps more accurately. So we're going to fuse everything that's going to come together as a corner. Alright, so that's all the spots that need to be fused. Now what we need to do is actually create intermediate type of geometry to build the rest of the surfaces. So within the line sub-object here, as long as I'm in one of the sub-objects, I can hit create line. I'm also going to go and turn on my snaps, but I'm going to right-click the snaps toggle to make sure that I'm only set to vertex. If I'm set to anything else, if anything else is checked, I want to turn that off. I only want vertices checked. So now when I hit create line, we'll be able to find those vertices and create segments of splines in between. So then we'll create back from here. Now, I am creating straight line segments for now, but that will be just fine. So we'll create down from here to here. Turn our snaps off. So I want to refine this edge right here to be able to create down from here. So go back to create line. S on the keyboard toggles my snaps on and off. So we can drag down there. Now I see here I've got some nice cap shapes, but this right now has got too many edges. This right now doesn't have enough. So again, we'll go back to refine, turn our snaps off. I'll refine there and there. And then I can hit create line, turn my snaps back on, and we'll draw up from here. So we're also going to go to the spline sub-object shape, turn snaps off, and I really do need a copy of this entire shape here. So in order to do that, we're just going to shift drag or shift scale it to create a copy of it. And then we can move it back where we need it. Scale a little more vertically. And then we're going to have to manipulate it into place. So we go back to vertex, move. Alright, so once we have things about where we want them, we're going to need to make sure that we refine some of these extra edges, because now these two vertices need to be fused together. We also need to refine this line, and this line. So again, we'll use fuse. So I'll select those, right-click, and fuse. Select those, right-click, fuse. Select these, right-click, fuse. Alright, now if anything moves too much, because fuse will bring the two vertices together, rather than bringing one to the other, it just brings them both together. Now as we look around, that's doing pretty good. We will refine here, and then move to round this shape out a bit. So we'll grab all of this through here, make sure everything is set to smooth. There we go. So for now, having all this interior vertices set to smooth allows it, as I move it around, to just kind of auto-create the tangents and the curves. So I get a much smoother shape. At least for now, it's going to work nicely. Alright, so we're going to go back to our create line, make sure snaps are turned on. Remember, that's S on the keyboard. And we create our geometry in between. So go down from here, and then this one we will refine. Turn off snap, and then we'll create a line with snap turned on from here to here. I don't think we caught that one quite right. It's also going to try to snap to another geometry in the background. Oh, look at that. It did on the last one also. So we turn our snaps back off. We'll grab that. We'll just bring it over to it. Same with the one in the middle. Bring it back over to our geometry. Grab these two vertices, fuse, make any adjustments we may want. So let's find the one we want to move. Let's just grab that segment and move it over so that I can get to that vertex. Now I'll turn my snap back on and I will drag that vertex back to that one. Alright, we're getting close now. We'll drag that down there. Take a look. Really everything here is four-sided shapes. Now there's a three-sided right there. But all of this will work really nicely when we apply our surface modifier. So let's do that. Go ahead, we'll get out of the sub-object, and from my modifier list, I'm going to find surface. When I drop the surface modifier on there, at times it will kind of not know exactly what to do. Alright, it looks like I've got a problem right here. So go back to our vertex, and as I look, I see that I don't have a vertex along that edge right there for this to join together. So now that I do, we'll turn our snap back on and we'll drag that one right over there. Turn snaps back off, select both of those, take a look here, make sure that we're following the curvature we want to follow, and then when we go back to our surface, everything's kept quite nicely. Now, we're getting a little kind of bumps in the surface here and there, but if we go back to our vertex and we start figuring out where those bumps are, we can start rounding out and smoothing that geometry. So we can bring that out a bit. If we turn on show and result, we'll actually see the finished surface as we work. So then we have a lot more control over making sure that everything's going the way we want it to. So I'm going to just continue to smooth all this out a little bit, and then we'll move on to the legs. Alright, that's going to work really, really nicely. From here, all we need to do to give this object some thickness is to put on a shell modifier. The shell modifier, we're going to set the outer amount to 0, and we're going to give it a bit of an inner amount. So that way I've got some thickness to the helmet, and we can go ahead and create the other half using a symmetry modifier. Now the symmetry modifier will actually put underneath the shell. So if I select the surface and then go down to symmetry, we can look at the mirror axis here and move it over. So once I've moved it over, by hitting flip, I'll create the other half of the geometry. So depending on which half of the geometry I'm trying to create, flip may or may not do exactly what I want it to do. In this case, turning on flip created the opposite half of the geometry for me. Alright, so that looks pretty good. The shell's happening after all of that. So we get a nice continuous piece of geometry.